Hey everybody, how's it going? So thanks for coming along to lesson number 15 of this Planetcoaster Top Tips for Realism series. This probably should have been lesson number 2, but this week we're looking at the essential items you are going to need from the base game to create realism in your parks. So given that you asked me for this one quite a lot, and also you asked me for shorter top tips videos, I think this would be quite a nice one to do. So you asked me for all of the items that I use to create realistic parks that don't involve ThemeMakers Toolkit. And you've seen some of the builds. I don't use many items, but I've stripped out all of the items in here and laid them out by building and then scenery pieces. Of course, they can all cross. You can use buildings as scenery and scenery as buildings, but let's just go through all of these. If you do, by the way, want a top tips video on ThemeMakers Toolkit items that I use, I'll absolutely do that too. Let me know in the comments below. That can be the next episode. That's going to take a bit of time to pull together because I've got 2,500 items to choose from, and I just need to audit which ones I use the most. So this is by far the most requested because you've got a lot of console players that also want to achieve this. Quick side note, this contains every single DLC available for the PC, including all of the monsters and the universal ones, and also the Ghostbusters pack and I think the Studios pack that you don't have on console. So just have that as a caveat in your mind. But let's start with all of the building pieces that I use, and then of course the reasons why I use them. So I always, like I say, this is only in alphabetical order. This isn't in any particular order of how often I use them or anything. It's just good to have. So you've already seen me use this one quite a lot. It's the wooden door. It's just so versatile. You can use it for all sorts of things. You can use it, well, as a door, or you could use it as a wall. So I use this most recently in the RMC Tapio, where I turn it round like this. There we go. And it becomes a wall, right? So you've just now got a wooden wall that you can use without having to build one. So I quite like using this. Next, you're going to need some kind of door. So my go-to door in game is the Firehouse Door from the Ghostbusters pack because it's big, it's generic, it's recolorable, and you can just easily slap the signs on the front. So I use this one more than all of the other doors in game. So then you also need AC units for your side of your buildings, and of course you know I use ThemeMakers Toolkit AC units, but I also mix it up with these ones as well. These are just perfectly fine if you're using base game stuff. You don't need to go extravagant or anything. These are just perfectly acceptable. They snap to the walls nice and easily. They look really good when they're in situ, and if you pair it with some piping, you get some really awesome results. So I always use that one. Then you're going to need yourself a pallet of lights. This is typically the pallet of lights that I would use for myself. The box light, the spotlight, the area light, the fire or the police light, the firewall light, the floodlight, and then the 4 floodlights. So they're the four. They're the lights that I would use the most amongst all of the other lights. And of course, that doesn't mean to say I don't use any other light. Just like all of the other stuff, just because I'm listing this stuff, it doesn't mean that I don't use anything else. But these are the ones I use the most. And of course, then if you're also going to be doing any kind of metalwork or meshwork or staging or anything like that, you're going to need to use the girders and the scaffolding. So I use these actually for roof girders more than I do for scaffolding or anything else. But of course, they're really versatile. They come in all of the 4 different sizes, so you can make different lengths and everything from them. So yeah, they're good to use for roofing personally. Then of course you have windows. You know, windows as walls. These are the 3 that I tend to use the most, purely because the backs of them are just so much better. There we go. Look, so exactly the same principle as the door. You've got this ability to have the wood effect, and then on the concrete one, on the castle window here, you turn this one over and you have a concrete back. And of course this is recolorable, so you can make your inverted commas concrete look like tarmac. You can make it look lighter, so you've just got full control over that. And then I also use the Spook Central windowsill. Well, you know this already. I use this to line off all of my plazas so that I can separate path textures and I can separate plaza textures, and if I'm using bricks and everything. So yeah, this is just a godsend for anything. You can, and because it's thin, so like the normal walls, they're quite thick, so you're sort of stuck with the width of that wall, but the Firehouse ones are actually a lot thinner to use, and you can use them as bedding for flower beds and that sort of stuff. So Really, really versatile. This is another one. It's the city brick wall, and I use this one for all of my dark stuff because it's the closest you're going to get to a blackout wall when you color it black, because all of the others have got textures, they've got different lights and different stuff to it. This one is just so perfectly black when it's covered over and everything that this is my go-to. But with that said, you're also going to need to choose a brick set to use. So this is going to be more relevant to the actual park that you're running and the age of the park and the style of the park. If it's more modern, you're going to want this kind of modern brick. If it's more rustic or British or whatever, then you're going to want the back brick, the old like worn brick. Or you can mix them around. Depends on whether you want a newer area, an older area, whatever, but you're going to need at least a brick set. So it's up to you whether you choose the city brick, which isn't so versatile in game. There's not so many pieces available to it, but that's the Ghostbusters pack for you. Or you can use the other two in-game brick. I tend to fall back on this one at the back here, purely because it also has the topper that comes with it. But this one I do use quite a lot as well. And then I've also got the round supports that come from the roller coaster supports, because these are just so versatile to use. You can use them as ceiling struts, you can use them as pillars, you can use them as sign holders. They're just really versatile to use, and it gives you a round option of the square pillars that we've got, which brings me on to these. So I also use the concrete pillars because you can line paths with these. You've seen me do it in all of my other builds, so they're off the grid, they're completely rotatable, so you can do whatever you want with them. You can use them on the ground, you can use them as pillars, you can use them whatever you want to use them for. And because they come in 3 sizes and they're recolorable, you've just got more control over that one as well. Likewise with these ones, these are also come from the roller coaster supports set. It's the facade scaffolding, and they come in two variants, and they're just a metal version of beams that you can use. So that's fine. I love it. They're just so versatile. I use them everywhere. Then you're going to need some kind of rustic roof set. So for this one, I either use the corrugated steel, corrugated iron one, or I use this one's from Spooky Pack, because it just gives a bit of an older woodeny type feel to it. So you've got 2 different styles, but they're the rustic kind of roofing that you can use. And then I fall always upon the crypt brick set rather than the castle brick set, because the castle brick set is really clean looking, but the crypt one gives it a bit of a weathered look. So if you're doing like wooden coaster stations that are aging, or any kind of structure that's aging, or retaining walls that look a little bit weathered, then I always tend to fall back on the crypt wall set from the Spooky Pack, because it just has that old feeling to it. Of course, it's designed to be that way. And then you're going to need some kind of flat roof. You know I love a flat roof, and this is not by any means of any stretch of imagination. In fact, I've just noticed I've missed one, and it's the Victorian. Let me just quickly add this. Victorian, it's this one here. There we go. Fix my mistake. Live on air. Happy days. We love it. So you know that I love a good flat roof, and that's because you can use them as path covers, and you've just got so many different styles and so many different whatevers to it. So for this one, for example, I'll start with the Victorian because I've just placed it down. You've got the beautiful brick effect, and then you've got this one here, which is your smooth concrete, and because it's colorable, it gives you the impression of carpet, but we don't have carpet in game. So if you're wanting to use it for inside your buildings, then use it as carpet. I did it in Reigate Lake and it looks perfectly believable. And then you've also got a panel, which is the Haunted House wooden panel. You've also got the marble as well. So these are awesome interior floors that you can use. Then you've got the castle flat roof, and this is good for patios or for terraces. Then you've also got the Haunted House one, which is the equivalent of the castle one, but it's just a bit more weathered. It just gives that little bit more of an effect to it. Then you've got the Goza temple roof from the Ghostbusters pack, and this gives you a block paving option. And then of course, you know I love the Firehouse roof because it's a neutral enough texture to be able to recolor and place down, and then you can just place them down and you're not having to worry about lining lines up or aligning it all. It's just like, it's just there, it's all done. Of course, no building is are you still with me, by the way? No building is complete without a fire escape, so the one that comes in game is perfectly acceptable. You can build them out of beams and stuff, that's fine. go ahead and do that if you're so inclined to do so. But of course, there's one in game. If you just want to fall back on the in-game one, it's perfectly acceptable. It looks perfectly believable. So go ahead, knock yourself out. If it exists in game and it's good enough, my take is use it. You don't have to build around it. Glass is a must, so you're going to need to put glass in all of your frontages of your buildings and everything, because it does actually have a reflection in certain times of the day. So you are going to want to have that as part of the realism, because it creates that extra level of depth that you don't notice that you don't notice that you notice it, but you notice when it's not there. So yeah, glass is a must, and it's recolorable, so you can do whatever you want with it. I've added this one, Graveyard Pillar, as a representation of everything that comes in game that can be turned upside down. So I may not use this necessarily as a graveyard pillar, but you can turn it upside down and suddenly it becomes the base of something. So this also applies to the chimney sets, which I've not included in this, but any of the chimneys can also be turned upside down, and you can use them as bases, and then you can just add your column or your pillar or your beam or whatever out the top of it, and then you just have this believable base. There's also available the cap that I've not included in this set. So there is a topper that you can use, and I use that quite a lot as a base. In fact, I think I'm just going to show you. I think it's called cap. It's this one here. So you just bring this down, and then I like to sink them down and then sink them in like so, knowing full well that it's actually going to be the same width. So you just double them up and you end up with a pretty decent looking foundation to it. So in terms of building decorations, you're going to want to think about planters and hanging baskets, and you can make your own using nature. That's absolutely fine. But I tend to like this one that comes from the Castle Pack, the fairy tale theme. It just does what it needs to do. It looks good. It's designed really well. It's just there, right? So it's fine. Then you're going to need some kind of warning signs. So I love these two. They're completely recolorable. You can make them relevant to your own country and everything. But I tend to use the one that's got the grip on it, because that tends to be what we have here in the UK. We don't tend to use this one unless I'm using it for road signage or road markings, that kind of thing. So I would tend to use this one. And then you're going to need a coin. It's spelled with a Q. This is just an amazing way of topping off the corners of your buildings. If your building looks a little bit rubbishy because it's got stark corners, try using a coin. You'll be surprised at what they can do. They come in two sizes as well. There's a smaller one that you can use, and they come in two variants, so you can mix and match. So go ahead and do that. Pipes are a biggie. So if you're doing any kind of ventilation, any kind of drain work, any kind of AC units, or any kind of realism that might involve movement of water and that sort of stuff, you're going to need pipes. So these are perfect. You know, you see me do it in Fundy and Reigate. I use them for the AC units on the ceiling. I use them on the back wall of Curse of Drayford Manor. I use them everywhere, in the pond or in the lake, all sorts. They're recolorable. So again, you've got full control over how they look. So yeah, pipes. You then also need, so we come on to like some of the buildings sets that I use. You're going to need a wood set of your choice, just like the brick set. You're going to need to choose your favourite wood set. I love the Spooky Pack bricks wood set because it's just weathered and it looks a bit old. But of course, the Western one does exactly the same job. So both of those I would mix and match. Then I would have on hand the panel set, because it gives you the ability to have a smooth wall. Okay, it's got a line here, but it gives a smooth wall. So have the panel set, and the rough brick set, because it's a way of having like block walls, so stone walls that you put in. And I tend to use these quite a lot on flower beds and stations for coasters, that kind of thing. Points of interest where I want something to make it look a bit more oldie-timey. But for everything else that's not oldie-timey, it's going to be rough concrete. Your rough concrete is going to be probably the most used thing, because parks a lot of the time don't even bother to make an effort, right? So they just have the rough concrete. You're going to need this for your channels, for your coaster tunnels, for bridges, it's just so versatile. There's so many places that you would use it. Just honestly, next time you go to a park, have a look at how often it's just bare concrete. This is your set for it. We spoke about this in the Building Tips 101. This is all the brackets that you can get on in the building set, so you're going to need brackets. They're versatile. You can use them as roofs, or you can use them as brackets, or you can use them as walls, whatever you want to do. Depends on your piece count. So yeah, don't forget your brackets. And of course, these lights, I use these quite a lot. These are more Gothic-y type lights, but most of our parks in the UK use Gothic kind of architecture, so I use these quite a lot. They're quite versatile. And you can also add them to beams and whatever, and make them look like decent lampposts. Stucco is the next one. I use stucco more than I think I've ever used in my Planco history, because stucco is actually the most versatile thing that you can use, because it's recolorable, it's textured, and most walls look like stucco. So you're not necessarily tied to being Dutch colonial architecture with this, as the game would have you believe. Stucco is really versatile, and it's in a lot of building styles, so go ahead and use stucco wherever. This is another beam that I tend to use. It comes from the base game. It's the thick wooden beam. It just gives you another beam option to hide misdemeanors that you might be making, columns, roof, lining, whatever. And then these lampposts I use pretty much everywhere, but that's because I like my Gothic looking parks, you know, the ones that have got a little bit of history and a bit of character to it. And also, between you and I, these throw the most light out of all the lampposts. So whereas the other ones, like the more modern ones, you have to spam them around and they look really awful, these ones from the vintage pack throw a lot of light, so you don't need so many of them, so your park doesn't look so cluttered with lampposts that they don't need. So yeah, I always use these ones. And then I use this as my brick or my tile roof option all the time. Recolorable, so you can make it look whatever. And then I also use this one here, which I'm going to come on to, which is the one from the Western pack. I use them interchangeably. It just gives you a couple of options for shingle roof. These come from the vintage pack. They go on the walls, obviously. They're the pictures. But I like to use them to fill space. So where I'm not using ThemeMakers Toolkit posters that are available, I use these because they're just perfect for oldie-timey feeling theme parks. So I like to use these quite a lot. These ones I use in backstage areas. It gives you the believability that it's all like coaster stations and lifting heavy things, and they're attached to the side of buildings and whatever. So I like to use them in my maintenance areas. Poles. So we've done the roof here. So the poles, they're just versatile enough. They come in 3 sizes. I use them for support braces for ceilings and that sort of stuff. Coming on to the end of this section, so planks are another one. These are really versatile. You can line walls with them, you can put them on the floor, you can build things out of them, and because they come in 2 sizes, they're relatively versatile. I wish there was a smaller one. I wish there was the 3rd option for the plank, but there's not, so it is what it is. Sink it into the ground, it's fine. It's whatever, do what you need to do with it, but you can build some pretty awesome structures with just planks. Then, of course, you've got your final beam options. Beams, beams, beams. You can build so much with beams. You've seen it so many times with so many creators. Just knock yourself out with beams. There's 3 different types that I always fall upon. It depends on whether you've got them available, but you've got the ones in the Western pack. They come in 3 variants. Probably the one I use the most because they come in 3 variants. You can use you can do it to do Gothic architecture, roof struts. Oh, you name it, you can do it, right? Then you've got the haunted house ones. They are thinner, so they're not as intrusive to your build. But they do only come in 2 sizes, so you do have to be a little bit careful and a bit mindful of where you're going to be using them there. But the haunted house spooky pack does come with these really thick beams, and they do come in 3 sizes, and these are awesome for strong structures. So you can use them as columns, you can use them as lining for roofs, etc. So so that's everything. Ooh, no spoilers. That's everything that I tend to use in the building set. This are quite a lot, actually, isn't there? That I tend to use in the building set. So let me just quickly prepare something back here, and let's talk about scenery set. Right then, guys, are you still with me? Good. So let's look at the scenery stuff then. So again, this is all of the stuff that I use the most out of the base game in order to get as much realism out of my parks as I possibly can. And of course, you're going to start with recycle bins. And wherever you use a recycle bin, you're going to need some kind of clutter and mess to go with it. So I just tend to pair it with the papers and everything that come from the Studios pack. Then I turn to the Adventure Pack for this one. It's the Ancient Carved feature. It's the only one I tend to use, actually, if I'm not building specifically Adventure. And that's because, just like Windows as walls, it's really versatile. and the back of it is flat. I say flat, it's textured, so you can actually build stuff from it. I've been known to build actual buildings using this, so it's awesome. I love it. And then of course your park is going to need some kind of floral decoration, planter and baskets and everything, and this is the one that I fall back to the most. It's the barrel planter that comes from the pirate theme, which we don't see a lot of pirate theme in this one, so let's give some love to the pirates. And then of course you're going to need barriers. I use these ones because they actually physically stop guests. So if I'm putting down shelving and everything for gift shops and that sort of stuff, then I'll always hide the barriers underneath the ground, and it stops the guests from clipping through them. And it just gives that little bit of realism because people aren't, clipping through. Just a word of warning, don't use it on your railway tracks. It's not going to work. It will just stop your guests, so there's no way of triggering them to be on and off when a train approaches. I wish there was. I wish you could trigger it, but you can't, so don't even try it. It doesn't work. Then, of course, no theme park is complete without vehicles, so I tend to use the vans back of house. There's also the garbage truck that I've not included in here because it's just too big for screens and everything, but vans, and then you just choose either flatbed or box bed. But your boxes, they can have images on it, so you can actually have your park logo or some kind of supplier logo and whatever on the back of it. But just don't forget those back of house. Cars you can use in your car park, and coaches obviously use in your coach park, and just choose relevant wheels that go with it. So of course you're not going to use these wheels on the buses, and you're not going to use these, well, you shouldn't be using these wheels on your cars, but you get the drift. No backstage then is complete without box clutter. So the boxes that come in the studio pack, yeah, it's just useful. You can just clutter them around. You can use them in storage areas. You can build out warehouses and stuff with them. So yeah, always include your boxes. Don't forget your don't die fencing. This is a no-brainer for everybody. All of your rides should be fenced off in accordance to your local rules and regulations and laws, but your rides and your dangerous areas need to be fenced off, and you need to choose the fences wisely. And your coasters will tend to be surrounded by don't die fence. We call it don't die fencing. It's chain link fencing is the official word. This is in the Studios pack. If you don't have Studios pack, I'm going to show you in a minute how you can make the equivalent of don't die fencing. It doesn't look as good, but you can still do some stuff with it. And of course your signage around your park. This is just a selection, but don't forget to remember, don't forget that your park is going to want to advertise as much as possible. So all of your shops are going to have swing signs, so just dot those around appropriately. You don't want to have them too far away from the actual place that is trying to advertise. So just remember your swing signs. Then we come on to your fences. So this is the palette of fence that I would typically use in various different ways for various different reasons. So like this one here is great for gardens, but you can also turn it upside down and have some kind of decorative trim on the top of your roof. Likewise with this one as well, the low metal fence, that's just the same. You can use it on top of roofs, you can turn it upside down, you can make beams out of it. Love it. You can use the low western fence for like your grassy areas that you want to fence off. So you saw in Reigate Lake, I actually used a custom building for it because that was the style I wanted. But this would have worked just as perfectly well. Low western fence. These ones are your more generic metal fences, and this is where the trick for your don't die fence then comes in. You can copy the smaller one, you can turn it around, and then you can overlay it like so. And then you can just make that a building, copy it across, put some pillars in, copy it across, and you're good to go. There is also a taller version of this metal fence. This technique also works with it as well. So go ahead and do that if you don't have access to the Studios pack. This will work just as perfectly fine. Or you can use this little bad boy, the metal walkway fence, where you can turn that up on its side, and that also works as don't die fencing too. And this one is available to everybody in game. So I'll show you that in a mo. So next then, I use the Studios pack film crew idle people as my ride staff. So you've seen these all everywhere. They're the two that I always use. There is also Businessman as well, so that you can also use. They have the same faces, they have the same hairstyles. They just have slightly different attire. They're just wearing slightly different. But you can color them. You can actually colour them, so remember to make your park diverse, and also you can colour their clothes as well, so you can make it relevant to the rides. So, girders. I always use girders for roofing. So if I'm not using the trusses we saw earlier on with the staging, then or beams, then I'm using girders. So girders are your go-to for anything because they're just I-beams, right? So they're just used for anything. Use them for transfer tracks, use them for roofing, use them for pillars, all sorts of stuff. So girders, two pieces that are just so incredibly versatile. And then we come across to the coloured curbing, so the black and yellow curbing. It's colourable, you can change the colours of them. I tend to sink these into the ground to create road markings. But in-game, they are used to... how do I describe it? So the red barriers that we've got, they stop guests completely. This creates friction on a guest's path, so they will choose somewhere else to go. But if there is nowhere else to go, they will still walk over it. If that makes sense. So they are functional in game, but I tend to use them for more warning signs, marking out areas. Any body of water is going to have a life buoy, a life ring, so don't forget those. And they are, again, they're colourable, depending on the country that you're in. Some are blue, some are yellow, some are orange, and I think some are red as well. So it depends on where you are in the world as to what colour that needs to be. So go ahead and recolour it. And then you've got the Locomotive rail track. These are great for runners for any kind of sliding doors. Of course, you can use them as rails. But they're good for sliding doors, or they're good for lining off pieces of wall, or they're good for your maintenance areas where you're building the transfer track and you want the runners on the transfer track. So these are just awesome because you can sink them down. And you can only show what you want of it, so they're great. Barrels then, of course, in your maintenance area, and these are the metal walkways. So if you don't have don't die fencing, you can just put these up on their side, and they kind of do the same thing, right? They've kind of got the same texture as don't die fencing. They're the same height. They're a bit chunky, but if you don't have the don't die fencing from the Studios pack, this is what we used before. This is what we always used to use in Alpha and everything. So you look at the likes of No Name Landia from Mike Sheets and Masked Bandit. They use this in some places. So go ahead. There's precedent set. Pallets. So in your maintenance areas, of course, you're going to need pallets just to clutter everything up. And I've included this one, the pavement, because it's a non-gridded version of the flat roof technique. So this is just another option that you've got here. Picnic benches. So these are the two picnic benches I always fall back to in game. And then, of course, a parasol that goes with it, some kind of umbrella. And you can snap the umbrella to the actual bench by clicking on Align to Surface, Position Snap, and then you can just snap it on and it will just go straight into the middle of the bench. And then don't forget to rotate it slightly. So, oh, we've got an autosave. Hang on. There we go. So don't forget to rotate it slightly. Just make sure that your angle snap is off. And then you can just spin it round and then place the next one. Duplicate it, place the next one, spin it around slightly. So you're just creating that variation. Remember that nature doesn't conform to patterns as such. So variation is your key. I don't use these a lot, but I've seen them quite a lot. They do create quite decent enough realism. Advertising signs that you'd find. And generators. Don't forget your park is going to need power, so you're going to need a generator. And then projection screens. So I always use the lit projection screen, but this sort of falls part of that whole TV. You're going to need the TVs inside the inside your park, so go ahead and use those. Art shapes are just unreal things. Like when they were first introduced, people were making some amazing stuff with them, but we weren't really utilizing them properly. Nowadays, art shapes are your absolute go-to. You can build anything with an art shape. If your imagination can get your head around the combination of things that you need, an art shape will do the job for you. They are just... I've used them for so much, I can't even list them. I can't even begin to list them. If you can imagine it, you can use art shapes for it. They're recolorable. They come in loads of different sizes. PC players, by the way, if your art shapes are still too chunky, I know that they're not perfect. You can find stuff that I'll show you in the ThemeMakers Toolkit section that I use in replacement of art shapes, but in the same way. So there's plenty of stuff. I use the rope on the walls because obviously you're going to put rope up so you can have access for maintenance areas. Then of course you've got a road barrier and some stuff here from the Western Pack. It just adds, so these three things, they add clutter to your backstage areas. These little brackets, you've seen just how versatile they really are. You can use them to represent bolts in wood. You can turn them around and have them as panels. You could actually use them for their intended purposes and put a TV screen on them. They're just perfect for anything that you might want. The Sedwick hotel chair, I use these in restaurants where I don't have any kind of sufficient chair. And then of course some kind of shipping container. Shipping containers, stuff will have containers that they ship things in. That's what a shipping container is, right? So don't forget that your park is going to be shipping things to and from it, and you're going to need somewhere to store them when they've been used so they can be picked up. Boxes and barrels, clutter for your maintenance area. This pillar that comes from the adventure pack, I use this quite a lot because it's versatile enough to turn around and you can put it on its side and all that sort of stuff. So I include that in here. Now we come to the special effects portion. So confetti I sometimes use if I've got a show that I'm doing. So you saw it on Reigate Lake when the park opens, it fires out confetti. I've included these two. These are the smoke and the fire, but colourable, because yes, fire is typically, as you can see here, orange, but sometimes it's not orange. Sometimes it's a darker red, or you want to control the colour of the flame. So that's why I always use the colourable smoke, because you then got control over the colour that they produce. So those two are in here. Then you've also got some flames. You've got the falling dry ice, the fountain splash. This one is nature. Don't forget that when you're when you're doing all of your flower beds and your areas of nature, you're going to have butterflies, you're going to have flies, you're going to have nature and bees and all of that sort of stuff. So don't forget to hide those in your flower beds, because that just gives this extra level of realism to believe that your park is alive. Then you've got the steam. So you use those on rides for effects and whatever, right? So you know what the steam is used for. And of course the pads of steam, the lasers for effects. In terms of water, I always use the small fountain, because even the small fountain is big. You use that for central water features. Then of course the variants of the fountain sprays. And I then just use the water spout for anything where there's a lot of water in a place. So like rapids and log flumes and that sort of stuff, where it's pumping a lot of water, just use that. I also use the Stuntful Dumpster in recycle areas, because it's just it's a recycle bin full of stuff, right? It just does what it needs to do. You can build your own, but if you're not so inclined to build your own, go ahead and use this one. Just make sure you turn the trigger off. Job done. Then of course you've got bins and benches. Up to you what you choose for your pallet. Go ahead and choose whatever you want. You've got traffic cones. That clutters out your area. So do your trash cans and your trash bags, your bin bags. Then you've got your TV screens. TV screens are really versatile. You can do all sorts with them. So whereas the projection screens would allow you to have things like custom floors where you can put carpets down, your TV screens are going to be more entertainment and multimedia driven. So you have them in restaurants and queue time boards and all of that sort of stuff. Water treatment plants are a must. Every park needs to have some kind of water treatment. Rapids and log flumes and everything will have some kind of water system. So you're going to need to have some kind of water tower. Your maintenance areas are going to need some kind of ladders and access. You're going to need privacy fences to hide away your unsightly parts of your park. So your maintenance areas will be surrounded by privacy fences, or your ugly areas around privacy fences. And then I've just included these ones. They come from, I believe, the Western pack, but I tend to use them as desks. So I have them like this, and I put a desk on the top, and then this is like a decorative part of the front of the desk. So I don't use them as fences or planters. I use them as walls. And then the last thing that I've put down here, I've got one thing that I've just remembered that I've not actually put in that I need to show you, are these scaffolding bits. Because it just creates an alternative wooden floor. You can use them as ceilings, you can use them as walls. They're just really versatile to use. And they come in so many different sizes that you can do all sorts. And the other one to show you, I think in game it's called manhole. Yes, manhole cover. Don't forget that your park will have drainage everywhere. They'll have drains everywhere. So place down your manhole cover, activate it on trigger, sink it into your path, and jobs are good. And you can then start to create your realistic areas. So guys, that, believe it or not, is everything that I would tend to use in a park to create realism. In addition to, of course, ThemeMakers Toolkit stuff. If I didn't have ThemeMakers Toolkit stuff, this is my most used item. So I hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments below if you have. And if you also want me to do a ThemeMakers Toolkit one, absolutely let me know and I will do one. But guys, thank you so much for getting to the end of this video. I really do appreciate it. If you have found it helpful, a like would be most helpful too. But of course, you know the routine by now. Until we speak again, please look after yourselves. Take care now. Bye-bye.